So my name is Dr. Hina Kamau. I'm the SAS representative for neuropsychiatry at the college, at the Royal College. I also work as a SAS doctor in neuropsychiatry here in Newport. How about you, Rob? If you could like to introduce yourself for us, please.
Thank you very much, Nonny, and thanks again for inviting me to come and have a chat with you today. I'm Rob Fleming. I'm a specialist anaesthetist working in the Midlands. I work at Sherwood Forest Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust in North Nottinghamshire. I have a long history of developing my career outside of training as a SAS doctor, and I have been involved in a number of national representative roles. I'm a board member at the Association of Anaesthetists. I'm its former SAS committee chair. I'm also one of the SAS advocates for my trust and co-chair of the English SAS Advocate Network.
Yeah, that's quite a lot on your plate. So how did you end up becoming a SAS doctor?
Well, I would say most of us who choose to become SAS doctors, there is a degree of choice and there is a degree of necessity, as with all decisions in life. Yeah. I started my career in a fairly conventional fashion. I did a foundation program and then went straight into a run-through specialty training program in anaesthesia, as was the norm then. And I did 5 years as a specialty trainee in anaesthetics. During which time I progressed relatively normally along the same lines as anyone else. Did the first chunk of my postgraduate exams, moved around, rotated a lot, grew tired of moving hospital every 3 to 6 months, and I met my wife. And my wife is a couple of years older than I am and was already about to become a consultant. And we started a family, and my career and my rotational training pathway was holding us back. And I was also attempting to take an exam with a newborn baby in the house, and decided I didn't really want to be a trainee anymore. And I had been fortunate enough to work with some truly inspirational SAS anaesthetists during my journey, many of whom remain very dear friends of mine. And so I made a conscious decision to resign my training number, and I chose to become a specialty doctor in order to progress and develop my career in one organisation.
Yeah, oh, that's very good. Funnily enough, my first job in the UK was in Mansfield with Sherwood Trust. So I'm very familiar with that part of the world. So what would you say was an obstacle that you faced, when you made that decision to move from being a trainee and into the SAS world?
It's a very interesting question. I've written a few articles along these lines over the years because for me, it seemed like a very natural choice. Coming out of a training program and developing my career with a bit of geographical stability and a little bit more agency in how I chose to progress and develop seemed like a very, very natural choice to me. But there were an awful lot of people who felt that was an unwise choice, and that by doing so, I was in some way committing career suicide. And it's reflective, I think, of some of the culture that surrounds SAS roles, is that the people who were trying to tell me what I would and wouldn't be able to do as a SAS doctor didn't really understand what SAS doctors were already doing. Because even at that point, there were SAS doctors in management and leadership roles, SAS doctors involved in education. Some of the inspirational colleagues that I've mentioned already were already doing things that other consultant colleagues were telling me I would never be able to do if I became a SAS doctor. It's interesting. A lack of awareness is very interesting, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because I'd say in my experience, it was also, there isn't much sort of mentorship, or you have to really look for it. It's not very readily available. Yeah. So how did you get through those obstacles?
Well, I guess, as I said before, in terms of all decision making is push factors and pull factors, and all decision making is a little bit of choice and a little bit of necessity. And in my case, I was at a point where I was no longer happy to be a trainee, and my decision was really, it was not a decision between remaining a trainee or becoming a SAS doctor. It was a decision between becoming a SAS doctor or choosing to do something completely different. And I did contemplate going into a different training program, something that would allow me to achieve that agency. I contemplated going and doing GP training, because in about the same length of time that I had left as an anaesthetic trainee, if I'd been able to successfully get on a GP training program, I could conceivably have become a GP. I don't think I would have made a very good GP. But that was the thing. It was seen as a more acceptable
Yes, yes,
alternative rather than
yes.
becoming a SAS doctor. And so I was fortunate enough that at that stage, there were some SAS doctors in one of the trusts in my region who were retiring. It was very easy for a clinical director in a neighbouring trust to create a specialty doctor job for me to apply for. And so I was in a fairly safe position to apply for a job, knowing I had a reasonably good chance of getting it, and resign my training number so that I could finish the year of training that I was currently working in, and progress seamlessly from one to the other. I also opted to get married in the summer between those two things.
Yeah. So you touched a little bit about some of the misconceptions. So what are maybe one or two misconceptions that you find that are out there about SAS doctors?
Okay, I'd say these are probably this. If I could compact down all of the talks I give and all of the articles I write to
Yeah.
the things I'm trying to change in the world, I would say the two big cultural misconceptions associated with a SAS career can probably be summed up as the middle grade assumption and the
Yes.
just for service assumption.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there is an assumption that as a SAS doctor, there is a ceiling to your career. So the middle grade trope is deeply unhelpful because both doctors themselves and the people who manage them believe that this is your level and you work at that level. There is an assumption that as a SAS doctor, you could not become a leader or an educator, or you could not progress to being on a consultant non-resident on-call rota, for example.
Yeah.
These things aren't true, and there are already plenty of SAS doctors who are leaders, who are educators, and who are indeed working as consultants. And I would say that's not necessarily the career of all SAS doctors. It's not my career. I'm not on a consultant on-call rota. But there is a belief that there is a ceiling to your career as a SAS doctor. But that ceiling is entirely cultural and is usually dictated by what normally happens within your department. And one of the big problems there is that middle grade idea, the assumption that all SAS doctors are the same and in some way homogenous, working at a level that they cannot progress beyond. And part of that, I guess, part of the reason why that particular trope persists is the other trope, which is the just for service trope. Now, there have been a huge number of national documents over the last decade describing the importance of supporting the professional development and progression of SAS doctors. And this is touched upon in the SAS strategy that RCPsych have published as well. That professional development, recognition and progression is part of your document too. And your document forms part of a library of documents that all largely say the same thing. But that idea that SAS doctors are just for service, that is the other reason why SAS doctors are unable to access development opportunities and are unable to progress from their current status within their departments. And those, I think, are the two things that do us most harm.
Yeah. I think, medicine in itself is quite a rigid system. So it's trying to be flexible in a system that's really rigid can be very challenging. So I think we can now talk about, as you also mentioned, our the Royal College's SAS strategy, which was put out to start between 20 this year to 2025, and it touches upon sort of clinical areas, education, leadership, QI, research, and academia. So I think we can start talking about leadership, as you already mentioned that can be a bit of there's a lot of misconceptions around SAS doctors taking up positions in leadership and management. So what would you suggest for someone as a SAS doctor who's looking for trying to get into positions of leadership and management? What would you suggest that they do?
So I would say, as I've already alluded to, the biggest barrier that they might face will be expectations, either the expectations of their department and their expectations of themselves. If somebody is interested in progressing into a leadership position, there is no part of being a SAS doctor that prevents that. And there are already SAS doctors who are subspecialty leads. There are SAS doctors who are clinical directors or service directors. There are SAS doctors who are divisional directors. There are SAS doctors who are associate medical directors. So within the hierarchy of an organization, there are probably SAS doctors, perhaps not all in the same organization, but there are SAS doctors working at every level, aside from medical director. And I don't believe that that's because it couldn't happen. I'm unaware of whether or not it has happened yet. And every time I believe that I've discovered an unbroken glass ceiling, someone will reach out to me on social media and tell me that the thing I think hasn't happened yet. has in fact already happened. So there may be a SAS medical director.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my biggest advice to them would be recognize that there will be people who will tell you that what you want to do is impossible because of your badge, and
Yes.
they are wrong and you are right.
Yeah.
The other thing would be that, you know, as a SAS doctor, you may have to work a little bit harder to demonstrate that you're capable of doing so. Some people in positions of leadership have undertaken fellowships in leadership and management, have undertaken professional qualifications, have done things to demonstrate that they themselves as an individual have an ability and a qualification above and beyond what their badge says. It's worth considering these things, but again, not every leader has these things, and it doesn't prevent people from being good leaders. So I would say, you know, the hurdles are primarily based on the culture of your organizations rather than reality. But
yeah. So in terms of, you know, the systems that we work in, what ideally, what would you wish the system to look like so that it could encourage people to encourage SAS doctors to take on these roles?
What an excellent question. I would personally, I believe that the restoration of a senior contract in all 4 nations provides a wonderful opportunity. So between 2021 and 2022, all 4 nations have restored a senior role. The associate specialist role, which is a term that people, perhaps some of your viewers and listeners may be more familiar with, the associate specialist contract closed in 2008, and between 2008 and 2021, there was no nationally recognised senior role for specialty doctors to progress to. Which meant that we were all, in fact, on the same contract, and it was very difficult to delineate between doctors who needed a bit more development opportunity and a bit more support to progress, and doctors who were already senior clinicians able to undertake these kinds of leadership and management roles. And I think the senior contract, making it normal for people to progress, would be one of the changes I would like to see in the world, making it a normal expectation that specialty doctors do see development opportunity, both clinical and beyond the clinical. In order to become a specialist, you have to be a well-rounded senior clinician. So I think it should be a normal expectation for specialty doctors to progress and develop exactly the way we expect doctors in rotational training to do. There is nothing magic about rotational training programs. And I think, you know, I think that is one half of it. So half of it is making it normal for people to progress and develop, so you can see where your pool of future senior colleagues is coming from. And the second thing that I think needs to change is we need to be more inclusive in the way that we advertise these roles. Exclusion by omission is very common. That, you know, adverts go out to all consultants, and if you mean all consultants, fine, but most of the time when those adverts go out, it's because nobody has even considered the existence of senior SAS doctors in their organization. It's not necessarily deliberate, but it has the same effect as if it was deliberate.
It's true. Yes, that's very true. We can move on to maybe the clinical aspects. So as I said, I have found that, you know, especially in the clinical scenario, progression can be very limited, you know. So what opportunities would you, you know, tell people, or someone who's interested in doing a SAS role, who is in a SAS role, what can they do to develop opportunities for themselves to progress? Because it can be really challenging because they seem to be bottlenecks every step you take.
So I would encourage people to push back against the narrative that their professional development doesn't matter. And as I've already alluded to, we all work in systems where there will be people who look after us and managers who believe that we are there just to provide clinical service. But your career is vital. Your career is vitally important. Psychiatry is no better off than anaesthesia is at the moment. We are both in workforce crises, and we could desperately do with supporting the professional aspirations of our doctors, seeing them progress and develop, and therefore retaining them within our workforce, because both of our specialties are currently losing people out of our workforce. So I would say, you know, have that in mind. When you have these conversations, know that you may feel powerless, but actually you are hard to replace. We are all very hard to replace. And I would say that there should be opportunity within your day-to-day week. There should be opportunities, and I would encourage organisations actually to job plan early career specialty doctors with development opportunity within their job plans. I would encourage organisations to give doctors who require development the opportunity to see that development in their working week. In psychiatry, for example, there is no reason why an early career specialty doctor could not be doubled up with a more senior colleague in order to acquire new skills and see development. And that shouldn't all be done in the specialty doctor's own time.
Yes.
I'd also encourage people to seek opportunities external to their organisations in the same way that rotational trainings do. Development courses, the opportunity to acquire new skills can be via external courses and external qualifications. And these things allow you to build a portfolio and a CV that says, look, I am more senior than you think I am, and I will take my expertise to another organisation unless you provide me with the opportunity to use it. You know, we have to be advocates for ourselves as well.
Yeah. I think you've mentioned, you've spoken a bit about sort of portfolios, and we know that there is CSER or CESR pathway for SAS doctors to progress and to get on registers. So what are the common pitfalls do you think that people make with trying to go down this path? Because I've spoken to a lot of people, and it's just nightmare story after nightmare story, you know. So what words of encouragement?
So my advice to anyone trying to undertake CESR is it's a lot of people fall down apparently on the non-clinical. So it is not, people can demonstrate what they need to demonstrate the clinical elements, but becoming a consultant or a specialist for that matter requires being a well-rounded senior clinician, and it involves demonstrating you have the ability to be a leader, an educator, a scholar. These things are as important in the modern training curricula from which CESR, from which the specialty-specific guidance of CESR is created. The non-clinical aspects are as important as the clinical aspects. I would also say that obviously for anyone who doesn't want to progress via CESR, there is an alternative. You can become a specialist. I am a specialist anaesthetist. I had aspirations to CESR that was somewhat derailed by the pandemic and a curriculum change. Sadly, I was in an unfortunate period of history. But I'm very happy to progress my career to be a specialist anaesthetist. So for those who want to CESR because they think it's the only way to become a senior doctor, the advent of the new senior contract means that's no longer true. You can progress your career while remaining a SAS doctor. And the final thing I would say on CESR is that hope is coming. So in November, we are seeing a legislative change, which is going to allow colleges to potentially include more of your career, more elements of your appraisal and revalidation, and to be potentially a little more flexible in the manner in which you demonstrate the things that are required to get on the specialist register. Some of the details of this are currently lacking, but certainly the intention from the GMC is that the changes to CESR, or the portfolio pathway as it's going to be called, are designed to make it so that doctors who are capable of working as consultants can become consultants. Because at the moment, there are plenty of doctors who are capable of working as consultants, where the logistical hurdles of CESR are the reason why they can't get on the specialist register, not because they're not deserving and capable. And recognizing knowledge, skills, and experience rather than just equivalence to a training program has the potential to change the game a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess it's, you know, medicine is changing. It's very fast, and we have to keep up. The system has to keep up with everything that's going on. So we have a quick fire round. So you are very well versed in matters SAS. So I'm just going to pick, 3 questions, and we'll see how well you do. So how many SAS doctors are in your organization? Do you know?
Around 150. I don't have the exact figure, but it is approximately 150.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a big number. Okay, so what formal management and leadership roles are occupied in your organization by SAS doctors?
So we have got the usual barrage of SAS representatives. So we have a SAS tutor who is now an acting consultant, having achieved her CESR, but was a SAS doctor at the point where she picked it up. We have a SAS LNC rep, and we have 2 SAS advocates. So we have a full house of the representative roles of SAS doctors.
Yes.
We also have within my own department, we have several subspecialty leads within anaesthesia who are SAS anaesthetists. So our lead for remote site, our lead for obstetric anaesthesia, our lead for transfusion are all SAS anaesthetists. To the best of my knowledge, we don't have any clinical directors, associate medical directors. We don't have anyone with an oversight role within their department. One of the things I would say is that within my organisation, there is a reason for that, in that they have a very solid history of supporting people through CESR. So we have a number of doctors in senior leadership roles, divisional directors and associate medical directors who are consultants, but are consultants because they have become consultants from a SAS role within Sherwood Forest Hospitals. I would like to see some specialists in those roles too, but I can't really begrudge the organisation having supported these doctors to achieve what their career goal was, which was becoming a consultant. Being a SAS doctor has not prevented them becoming leaders. They just became a consultant first.
Yeah. Okay. So finally, what research or academic roles are occupied in your organizations by SAS doctors?
So again, I can only really speak for my department because I am relatively new to Sherwood Forest, but I know that within intensive care, one of our SAS anaesthetist intensivists is the PI for an ongoing study. I've recently been trying to support a couple of my other SAS colleagues into doing some data collection for another study. So there are tentatively, I can say that there are positive things happening within my own department. I can't really speak much beyond my own department, though, sadly. Even I'm not that well versed on everything that happens there.
But I think you've done very well. I think that you've scored 3 out of 3 in those things. So back to you. You touched a little bit on some progressions you made in your career. So you chose not to take the CSER route, and you've taken another route. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
So yeah, no, absolutely. I for the reasons we talked about already, I didn't suit a training program at the point where I was in one, but I didn't necessarily think that would mean I would never be a consultant. When my son went to school, when my daughter is older, so when both of my children were at school, I decided to pick back up some of my postgraduate exams. So I decided as a specialty doctor to finish the FRCA and to get my name on that list. And then from there, I decided it would be a reasonable thing to start gathering the evidence towards CESR, not necessarily because I felt unfulfilled as a SAS doctor, but at that stage, there was no senior role to progress to. The specialist role didn't exist either in name or in concept at the point where I started trying to do this. And so I thought, I could gather the evidence and build my collection of evidence, potentially get myself on the specialist register. And even if I did get myself on the specialist register, I was uncertain what I would choose to do. I might have continued to work as a SAS anaesthetist while I waited to see what the right opportunity was for the rest of my career. And as I say, sadly for me at least, I passed the final part of the FRCA in June of 2019, and then by March of 2020 we were in lockdown, and most of the elective activity in my organisation had been shut down. And sadly, this for the same reason that trainees were unable to access the development opportunities they needed during that period of history. As a specialty doctor anaesthetist, it was extremely challenging for me to access the opportunities that I needed. I gathered about 2 years worth of evidence. I have a logbook. I have an extensive quantity of workplace-based assessments, as they were then. But sadly, during the second wave of COVID, the timetable for the curriculum change was announced, and it was very apparent to me that I was not going to be able to finish. But simultaneously, serendipity presented me with a different route. So at the point where the senior SAS contract, where the contract reform was announced and the specialist role was announced, was around the same time I was realizing that CESR was going to be extremely challenging. And it became very apparent to me very quickly that I met all of the requirements to be a specialist. So all I needed to do there was convince an employer to create a job. That was challenging too. But I could see how I would be able to progress my career without necessarily getting on the specialist register. So my inability to finish my CESR stopped being such a big deal, because I could see how I could become a senior colleague without it.
Yes. Oh, that's really good. It's really, especially for me, it's really encouraging to see that you can really progress in your career. And it's nice knowing that there are people like you out there who we can sort of model ourselves against and see, because, representation is really important, So I always love ending on a positive note. What's one thing you really enjoy or love about being like a SAS doctor or a specialist doctor?
So I would say I take a lot of pride in the fact that I have created my own career within medicine. I take an extraordinary amount of pride and pleasure from the fact that there have been various adversities faced, and I'm far more privileged than some, but there have been adversities within my career, both within rotational training and since. I take an extraordinary amount of pride in the fact that I'm still here, and that
Yes.
I progressed and I developed, but I did it largely my own way.
Yes.
And there is a lot of pride to be had in that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah. So, but thank you for giving up your Saturday.
Pleasure.
And it's nice and sunny, so I won't take it for granted that you're here talking to me. But yeah, thank you very much.